You do this every single time. You always join the call, but you don't have your headphones on. Aaron and I start talking to you. We get halfway through a story, and you're like, oh, okay, sorry. Can you repeat everything you just said? And we say something every single time. I don't know. Maybe you have your speakers turned on instead of your headphones because you swap between them sometimes.
If it's every single time, not once ever, then I don't know why you would suspect that.
It's just because sometimes it's different.
Hi, Aaron. Hi.
Hello, I'm here.
What's up, my good friend Aaron Lynch?
Hi.
Hi.
We're packing hot dogs for the road.
This is exactly what the nerds want.
A friend got burned.
I see dead.
Yes.
We ended up,
Okay,
by the
fine.
end of the conversation, we had very similar opinions, and yet somehow I was still wrong.
Well, yeah, obviously.
That happens a lot. That
I
happens.
thought you would have caught on by episode
surprisingly
like
often.
50 something. Yeah.
Again, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 50 times.
Shut up, Zach.
Hans, I
No,
think.
Aaron, listen. This guy came in the call.
Yeah.
He said, hello, can you hear me? And I nodded my head and started saying yes. And he said, okay, great. Now, he must have been doing that purely based off of the video because he did not have his headphones on. I thought maybe he has, audio playing through his speakers because sometimes he does that when Sarah comes in the room. So I launched into a story and I started talking and it wasn't minutes, but probably a good minute into me talking, he puts on his headphones and goes, okay, sorry, here I am. And it's like, dude,
But then he says,
does this every time.
You do this every time. And so what I just hear is that this is like
You
60
responded to
times
me.
that
You
Hans
said-
has fallen for it.
You said, is this the right
60
mic?
times you have fallen
You
for
said,
the
is this
exact
the right
same
mic?
thing.
And I said, yes. And you said, okay. I figured,
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe you have your speakers set up instead of your headphones right now. I don't know.
Apparently not. That's the one thing
See,
we
this is
call
why
it,
we
Anna.
need to do at least one episode where we're all actually in the same room.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We need to do that at some point.
I can't.
I
I can't wait. I'm pretty sure I'm
I
going to
can't
die.
It will
yeah,
kill
well,
me.
because I saw. What was it? What beverage was it? I saw a video the other day. It was some energy drink or some soda or something. That had just been sitting out in the elements, sitting outside for 20 years, and the amount of different textures and colors inside this one bottle was horrifying because it comes as one. It's a liquid. It's one color. There's just the fact that you can see it all separated, because it was a glass or clear plastic container. It made me really worried because that Steven Seagal drink is in an opaque can. You can't see what's inside.
We're going to have
But,
to shake
Gotta
it.
be layers by
That
now.
carb-
Is it
Carbonation's
better to
dead.
know,
We can shake
or
it.
is it better to know, or is it better to not know what it actually looks like?
Ah.
Are you drinking it blind out of the can, or are you gonna?
No. We got to
So
pour it
here's
in
my
the cups.
fear. Here's my fear. If we pour it, we'll accidentally decant it and we'll all get different drinks.
Yeah. My freshly decanted vintage.
Yeah.
That is vintage. What did we say?
experience.
It's 20.
So
22
Zach will
years
get
old
the
or
top
something.
layer.
The expiration date is 2002. So
It's just Zach will just get the
23.
cordyceps that floated to the top of the drink,
The cordyceps.
but
and I'll
I'm,
just get a shot of straight vitamin C from the second layer or something.
And then I'll get the sludge at the bottom.
Yeah, of course,
No, I think that
like
it
you
can't.
deserve.
It can't. Why? It can't be carbonated anymore. There's no way, right? After 23 years, it can't be.
I don't know. Those cordyceps might have kept the carbonation in.
I bet you could shake it up and get it all sort of.
well, not but you could do swirl it.
It's no, you do like you do with salad dressing to mix it all together again.
This is at least the fourth time we've compared this energy drink to salad dressing.
Well, this is the fourth time we've talked about it having layers.
Hey guys.
Oh my! Still haven't tried it.
Hans, have you seen Lily in her little Lily diaper?
I've seen pictures, yeah.
Speaking of diapers, Let's talk about The Visit.
Oh,
Oh,
Aaron, terrible transition.
No.
Terrible transition. No, come up with another one. That absolutely talking about dog diapers cannot be our intro to this movie. It can't be.
I mean,
it absolutely
do you have a
can't
better
be.
intro to this
I
movie?
hear you have a problem with germs. Smack.
I watched this movie back when it came out in theaters when I was in college.
Really?
Yeah, because I mentioned it before, but this was so it's funny because there's like this parabola that
Yeah.
we're gonna see like coming from the opposite direction, technically, like, the same shape, but just like backwards.
Yeah.
Because Shyamalan made some like strong movies, then some weak movies, and then it's like, oh hey, he's strong again. We're gonna have that same thing in reverse. Because this was like basically the promo I heard for this movie was just like Shyamalan's good again.
Shyamalan's
Like you
back.
had Happening, you had Last Airbender, you had After Earth. So that means for us back in 2015, this was, hey, Shyamalan's gonna be good going out on forward. Since we're working backwards, The Visit officially means Shyamalan's gonna be bad now going forward for at least a minute there. So anyway, so I saw this. This is one of the Shyamalan movies I saw, and other than Trap now, the only Shyamalan that I've seen like in theaters. So I've seen this before. I knew pretty much what I was getting into, but I felt really bad like halfway through this movie because when we were talking about Knock at the Cabin, Hans is definitely talking about how like, yeah, this isn't normally my kind of movie. Like I really don't get into horror movies. So Knock at the Cabin's kind of not a movie for me. Halfway through The Visit, I'm like, oh, this is really not a movie for Hans.
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't.
I like felt so bad. I'm
so-
like, oh, we made Hans watch this. He's gonna hate this.
So let's start at the top.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Aaron.
Hi, I'm Zach.
I'm Hans.
Yeah, good. And so we're talking about M. Night Shyamalan's The Visit 2015 with Catherine Hahn, which was
Yeah.
great, and some child actors who were also, in my opinion, great.
Great job. Yeah. Both did.
Like,
both did a
really good job. I was surprised. This is, in our watching of the Shyamalan movies backwards, I would say the first real horror movie. Like, this is I believe very solidly a horror movie.
Like you
this
have kind of
meant to be very
suspense
scary.
thrillers, but this is
Yeah, so we've had like some vaguely spooky movies. I mean, that's just kind of a theme throughout the Shyamalan movies as we've watched them. So they're vaguely spooky. I think the closest we got to a horror movie was Split, but even that wasn't really very scary. It was just suspenseful at times. This
unsettling,
is,
maybe.
I would say, straight up and down a horror movie.
Yeah.
Although I will say at the end, thank goodness for me, I do not like horror movies. I don't like horror as a genre. I find no joy in being scared.
Nope.
I don't understand it as a genre.
Agreed.
I will say thank you, M. Night, for the end of this movie kind of saved the movie for me. Because at a certain point, it stops being scary for me. And I will say, I think there is... I think there's a Shyamalan twist in the movie.
Well,
And when
we'll get there.
the
You're getting ahead of
Shyamalan-
yourself.
A little bit of spoilers for the synopsis that I'm about to give. But I think when the twist hits, I'm like, oh, thank goodness. For me, it was like a moment of release that I'm like, okay, this movie is not as scary as I thought. Okay, we're good. I was, after the twist hit, I was okay for the rest of the movie. Like, it was kind of suspenseful and spooky, but in the way that previous Shyamalan movies have been for me, it wasn't as scary as it was before the twist hit. But anyway, let me give a really short synopsis of this movie. Let me back up a little bit. So, Catherine Hahn has been estranged from her parents for like decades. She ran away from home to marry an older man. Her parents opposed this. She like had a big blow up with her family and ran away from home to be with this older man. The older man ended up leaving her. She had 2 children, a girl and a boy. Those children grow up. They are both like in their early teenage years.
15 and 13, I'm pretty sure.
15 and 13. Yeah, that sounds about right. 15 and 13.
And I think she was like pregnant with the daughter, the first kid, when she like ran away.
Yeah. And she ran away at like 17, 18 years old, like
Yeah.
really young. With like a 30-something-year-old man. Yeah, she gets a message from her parents. Hey, we want to meet our grandchildren. Like, we kind of want to start to reconcile. It's been a long time. We want to meet our grandchildren. Can you send them out to meet us You send them from 30th Street Station, Philadelphia, put them on the Amtrak train, and send them out to come and meet us, because of course there has to be a scene at 30th Street Station in Philadelphia because it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie. So they do. So Catherine Hahn says, I'm going to go on a cruise with my new boyfriend while my kids are going and visiting their grandparents, my parents, and the oldest daughter, the older child, the daughter, Rebecca, called Becca throughout the movie. She's like 15 years old. She's putting together a documentary film. So she's interviewing people and putting together this whole like experience of their trip. And so this movie is a found footage film. It's a found footage horror movie in 2015, which was like the tail end of the popularity of found footage horror movies. So this was the same time as like the Paranormal Activity movies and the VHS movies. This was like the end of the height of found footage horror. This is like 2016, you get the Blair Witch like new sequel, which I remember being a big deal, but I don't remember anybody talking about when it came out. This is like the height of the popularity of the Paranormal Activity movies, like I said. So M. Night Shyamalan does found footage horror. And so the whole thing is Becca's documentary of her experience of this. They go and stay with their grandparents for a week, and weird stuff keeps happening. So like at night, their grandma like runs around the house and scratches at doors and just walks around the house barfing on the floor and doing crazy stuff. Their grandpa is weird and secretive about a shed out in the field and all kinds of crazy stuff. And they keep explaining it away as, oh, we're old. Oh, your grandma has dementia. Oh, your grandfather, he has like incontinence, and so he hides his poopy diapers in the shed and he burns them later. So they go through all this like crazy stuff. They're trying to record their grandparents doing crazy stuff to keep evidence of it. And then the big twist, the third act twist, is that these two crazy people are not their grandparents. They're actually patients from a psychiatric hospital at which their grandparents volunteer as counselors who escaped the psychiatric hospital, murdered the grandparents, threw them in the basement, and have been posing as their grandparents for the whole week to like live a week as normal grandparents. This was like a dream of theirs. And at the end, they plan to kill the two children. And then so in the third act, Catherine Hahn is on a race to get to the house before her two children are killed by these two people who murdered her parents. That is the point where it stopped being scary for me. It was still interesting and I still liked it, but it stopped being scary for me once the twist hit. And I do think we've talked about the Shyamalan twist in the past. I do think this movie has a very solid twist. Like we've talked about, what is a Shyamalan twist? What is a twist in a film? I think this does make you reevaluate the film after this information is revealed. Oh, how was this working throughout the movie? How does that change what I was thinking about these characters and what I was thinking about these events? I do think this is very classically a twist in the third act that makes you reevaluate what's going on. Generally, the film, I say positive. Oh, the kids live at the end. They escape. They end up killing the two old people, and they escape, and they get into a police car with Catherine Hahn. And then at the end of the movie, during the credits, the little boy, he does a rap about his experience being almost murdered by an old man and having a poopy diaper shoved in his face. That's a very kind of vague, very quick synopsis of the movie. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's in a genre that I don't like. I do not like horror movies. I don't find joy in being afraid. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get people who like horror movies. If you do like horror movies, more power to you. Some people I really respect like horror movies. I don't find them fun. But I did think this was a very well-made movie, and reading a little bit about the background of this movie and what people thought of it at the time, I can see why people said, Shyamalan's back, baby. This is finally a good Shyamalan movie. Great. I don't know everybody, what your opinions were. I thought it was well-made, not in a genre that I like, so I ended up giving it 3.5 stars on my Letterboxd review. What'd you give it, Hans?
What are your thoughts?
Didn't like it. Actually hated it. Really just did not enjoy my time watching this movie. I really didn't like it. For me, I can understand why people would like it if this is your thing. Just like you said, there are people out there that I know that really do like this style of movie. I'm not one of them. I can respect it for what it is. I didn't like it. This is like 2 stars. Did not like it for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I did not give it a like on Letterboxd. I just gave it 3.5 stars. Zachary, what'd you think?
Normally we're coming into these with like a fairly similar experience, other than the fact that Hans hasn't seen every famous movie he's supposed to have seen and has only watched weird, like esoteric, like 80s comedies that you haven't heard of. Other than that, we typically have a pretty similar experience, pretty similar perspective. Like, this is definitely the one where we're the most different here, because there's people that are really into horror. There's people that like all they watch are horror, and I'm not like as into horror, but I like me a good horror. I've seen like a good few, which I think it's not like it's the issue with the movie, but I think this is pretty solid. I gave it like 3 stars. Like, it's pretty decent, but
okay.
What?
Well, no, I gave it the highest number here, and I don't like horror movies very much. I just thought it was a well-made movie.
Well, but that's the thing is,
it deserved at least 3.5 stars.
But I feel like because I have seen some of like what the best of like what the horror genre's done, like I've seen like most of the Halloween movies, most of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I just watched Nosferatu in theaters the other week.
Ugh.
That was fantastic. Even I'm not huge specifically into the found footage genre, but like I've seen Paranormal Activity, Blair Witch, like the big ones, VHS. I had some buddies that really liked the VHS movies in college, so I saw the first couple of those. So
yeah, and like I said, this came out around the same time as those.
yeah. Well, not to be too pedantic.
Yeah.
This came out after or around the same time as I think the 3rd VHS and like the 6th Paranormal Activity.
Well, because I think there were actually 2 Paranormal Activities in 2015.
There's one in 2015 and one in 2014. But the main point, the reason I say this is because like this, in some ways, found footage first, there were technically ones before, but it really hit it big with Blair Witch, way earlier than this, like good few years earlier than this, like turn of the millennium. But then you kind of had this resurgence definitely with Paranormal Activity. VHS comes a little bit later. And this is, I think, like last, helicopter out of the country, like last huzzah of the found footage. Because then Paranormal Activity disappears until 2021. The genre drops off. Like if you just look at like the Wikipedia page for found footage films, it's like boom. Drop.
You get like 20 in 2015.
Yep.
Like 10 in 2016. Then once you hit 2020, it just dies. They're like a couple a year.
So I think the problem is it's pretty good. I remember thinking it was pretty solid when I watched it the first time and thinking it's pretty decent this time. I think maybe when I first saw it was like a 3.5.
What is the difference between pretty solid and pretty decent?
Well, what I was going to say, I think it was a 3.5 and now it's like a 3. Pretty solid's a 3.5. Pretty decent's a 3.
Okay.
It's like
such an arbitrary scale.
It was like a strong 6 to a light 7 before, and now it's like a light to decent 6 to use like the Fantana rating scale. Like we're splitting. It's not like this time I watched it and it's crap, but it's just I think it is a pretty well made horror. But I've seen a lot of pretty well made horror, and I've also seen a lot of excellent horror. So this is probably, I would posit, in like your top 5 horror movies you've ever seen.
Oh, probably.
Statistically, just based on how many horror movies you've seen.
Just because I hate the genre,
right?
I actively avoid the genre. So,
but this, like, I couldn't say this is in my top 20 horror.
So, like, just to put it in context, dear listener, the horror movies I've seen that I can remember, I've seen Children of the Corn. I've seen this. I've seen what's the one with the mirror and
Oculus?
I've seen Oculus. That's pretty much it.
No, but you ever see Alien? You ever see Prince of Darkness? You ever see any of
I have seen some of the Alien movies. I don't know if I consider them horror.
First one,
they're too sci-fi for me to be horror.
You ever see The Thing?
I've actually not seen The Thing. I've played the board game many times, but I've not actually seen the movie.
You ever see some classic slashers though?
No, I just have no interest.
Home invasion horror?
No, I just have no interest in it.
You ever seen The Conjuring? You ever seen The Conjuring 2?
I've seen The Exorcist.
Oh, Exorcist is good. Exorcist is great, actually. You ever see like Insidious? You ever see Sinister?
No, I did see. Oh gosh, there's like a demon around, and they're trying to do a seance, and I know that describes like 100 million horror films. Yeah. But like Tiny Tim, there's like a Tiny Tim soundtrack.
Oh wait, that's Insidious or Sin. Oh,
I think it was Insidious or something like that. I was at a party and we watched this movie and I hated it. Until the demons showed up, and I'm like, oh, that's stupid, and stop being scary or
That was
interesting
Insidious.
at that point.
Was definitely Insidious.
Yeah, I've seen Insidious.
I uses Tiptoe Through the Tulips. I didn't watch a lot in high school, but I had some friends that were into horror, so I watched a lot of horror in college.
Yeah, we at the seminary we did not watch a lot of horror movies. We watched Oculus. We watched as a group at the seminary.
Okay. Did you watch The Exorcist at the seminary?
No, actually we didn't.
So I think that's so basically by the long and short of it is I thought it was pretty solid. I think it does some things very well. Weirdly enough, I'm very surprised by your reaction because my read of the intention is that the first half is kind of like unsettling. Hey, this is a little weird, but we're not sure if it's in our head. And it's supposed to, once Catherine Hahn goes, those aren't my parents. That's when they're like in dark basements being chased. That's when they're like that's.
Oh
for
no,
me
at that point I'm like, oh okay.
I mean, but like it's just interesting because that's kind of like when it goes from like kind of horror to like this is horror. They're being chased in basements by crazy people. Like,
okay, so here's my thing. So when they revealed, these are just two people from the mental hospital who killed your grandparents and tried to replace them, I'm like, oh okay, the mystery's over. There's nothing supernatural going on here, and I don't care anymore. Like this is just to use a crass term, crazy people, and that's the danger, and we're good. Like that's such a
we're
benign,
good because there's two homicidal old people chasing.
So that's just such a benign everyday evil that it didn't phase me at all anymore.
That's just benign.
Has happened to you before, Aaron?
No, but just like
you're like, oh, thank God. I'm relieved you're not my grandparents. You killed my grandparents and you're trying to kill me. That's so relieving.
It became too earthly and too pedestrian to be scary anymore.
So you would have been more scared if it was a supernatural horror.
If it were supernatural, I would have been more scared, yeah.
So you should watch. So you should watch more movies like Insidious and Sinister and.
No,
Exorcist.
that's not the answer.
No, I shouldn't. I don't enjoy the feeling of being scared. That has always confused me. Why people like horror movies? Like I didn't like this movie until the last 20 minutes when they revealed, it's these two people who killed your grandparents. Like, oh, thank goodness. Then I can just watch it's basically an action movie after that, and I can have fun with this.
Sure.
Because before that, I'm like always uncomfortable, and I hate being uncomfortable. Definitionally, I don't enjoy being uncomfortable.
Well, I will say, so interesting. I feel like the twist had the opposite effect on you as what I would expect the intention was, but it does feel like the first hour worked on you exactly how it should. Like, I think you're supposed to be uncomfortable for that first hour because really, especially like the kids, for the first 20 minutes of them being at the grandparents, you're just like, yeah, that's kind of weird. But if I was 13, I wouldn't automatically jump to this is like a crazy killer.
Yeah.
I would just be like, wow, this grandma that I never met before is really freaking me out.
Oh, yeah. I would think, my grandparents are, content warning, self-harm. I think my grandparents might be suicidal and super depressed and kind of taking that out on me. There are multiple scenes where the grandparents kind of put themselves in situations where they could be conceivably attempting suicide, which was deeply uncomfortable. Don't like that in media. I don't enjoy that, obviously. Fair. It made me really uncomfortable, but I think that was also the intention.
Well,
but
I think
then
that's the thing.
Therein lies the rub with me. I don't like being uncomfortable. I think that's a pretty normal human experience.
Is yes, it's uncomfortable. It's very deeply unsettling, and yes, content warning for this, but probably my favorite moment in the movie just because of how much they are trying to do something so specific, and I think they pull it off very well, is specifically when the young boy walks into the room and grandpa just has a shotgun in his mouth. And he goes, I was cleaning it. I before the kid even has a chance to ask a question, he's like, I was just cleaning it, I swear. It is really, that would be so easy to mess up and do poorly.
No, I think it was expertly done.
I think it was done. And so that just gives me, I'm just that's peak. That's a highlight of the movie for me.
So here's my whole thing. I think that scene encapsulates my whole idea about the movie. Expertly done doesn't mean I like it. I gave it 3.5 stars because I think it was 3.5 stars good. I think the craft that went into this deserves at least that. I didn't give it the heart because I don't like it. I don't enjoy this. I know lots of people that I respect and love who do find this kind of media really interesting and enjoy watching it. I don't.
Aaron, can you watch Nosferatu while it's on theaters? Let me know what you think.
I really want to watch Nosferatu because I love Dracula. I loved reading Bram Stoker. I actually loved that book way more than I thought I would because it was a horror book and it was like the literary equivalent of found footage. It was a collection of journal entries. It was an epistolary novel, and I didn't think I would enjoy it, but I loved it. I love that book. I think it's really cool and really fascinating.
Because I couldn't even talk Hans and going. Hans, that's a no-go. I did go with Sarah and some other friends. And afterwards, Sarah's just like, nope, hated that, didn't like that. And then like this other Eddie, this other friend that we went with, he's like, nope, yeah, not it. And I'm just sitting there, just like, wasn't that fantastic? Like, wasn't that great? Like,
I need to see. I do need to see it.
So I'm just sitting there like that was so fun, you guys. Like I am one of those
one.
people. I watch horror and I'm like, wasn't that so fun?
No.
Like the part when you're like pissing your pants because the dude just like kind of came out of the shadows with the knife and it like played like a really loud stinger noise. Wasn't that fun?
No.
Okay, so I think we need to talk about this in the context of M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, because we've just been talking about horror movies lately.
Yeah, we have talked about, when we've talked about these movies, how his films are like vaguely spooky. Like there's always a tension and like this plausible deniability of supernatural things going on. And I think that's fine. So like in Trap, the first movie we watched together, I loved that movie. I thought it was great.
Hell yeah.
And it was vaguely spooky, but in a way that I think was fairly grounded in reality, and that never dipped into horror. Or even Servant. I think that was like, so far, the closest we've gotten to horror. Old was really close. Beach That Makes You Old was really close. This is the first that we've watched that I would say is just a straight up horror film.
Found footage horror. Right there with
Not like it's a found footage horror film. Really no caveats on that. It is meant to make you scared and uncomfortable. The other movies we've watched so far, I have actually, that like come close to horror, I've enjoyed more because I don't think the point of Old was to make me afraid, but to make me think about stuff. The horror, the fear of Beach That Makes You Old was to get me to think critically about aging and growth and change throughout life. This, I think, does have a point at the end. I do think it has something to say about growing up, and I have something very important to say about that. But I think tonally, it's mostly about making me scared, and I have no interest in that. I have absolutely no interest in a film that just wants to make me scared for the sake of being scared. I do think it has more to say than that, but I think it's like a secondary point.
You ever notice how Aaron like soft launches the main point that he's building to? Like when he's talking about something, he's just like, in 5 minutes I have something really important to say, and then he's talking, and then he's like, okay, in just a minute I have something really important to say.
I'm a professional rhetorician. I don't know if you know that.
Well, but now I'm just sitting here, I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever, get through it. What's the point you want to make?
See, now you're on the edge of your seat and you're paying attention to everything I'm saying.
Yeah, but just
right?
tell me.
So I think something worth talking about is how so far in, I would say, all of the movies that we watched, Shyamalan includes child actors and children. Everything we've talked about so far in Shyamalan has to do with growing up and being a child. I think that is a solid theme of Shyamalan's career, is talking about growing up and being a child. And I think this movie really solidified that for me, because I think this is the most directly about being a child. I think that is the main message of this film, beyond the horror and beyond the subjective experience of being scared. I think it's about being a child, because he does, in the last like 5 minutes of the movie, use the horror to cause the characters to work through, the child characters to work through their trauma as children. They've both experienced trauma, and so they get to work through that in an extremely high stress environment as children and react to them as children. So like the older sister never looks at herself in the mirror. She thinks she is worthless because her father abandoned her as a child and thinks that she is unlovable. And so never looks at herself because she finds no value in herself. And yet she kills the crazy woman who's trying to kill her with a fragment of a mirror. In order to, defeat the villain, she has her face pressed so hard into a mirror, the mirror cracks, and she uses a fragment of that mirror to kill the woman who's trying to kill her. And the young boy has a feeling of unworthiness because his father abandoned them right after a Pee Wee football game in which, because of fear, he froze and was unable to tackle, and it was his responsibility to protect the quarterback. And so in the climax of the film, he overcomes his fear and tackles the adult man who is threatening him. And actually, I loved that scene. Shyamalan has a talent for finding good child actors. I will eat those words when we get to After Earth. I have seen After Earth. Yeah, I think the two kids in this movie kind of crush it. They do great. And I want to say that M. Night Shyamalan is really good at directing kids. He's a good director when it comes to children. I wasn't there when this was filmed, so I don't know if that's true. Maybe these two kids are just like savants, and he's worked with really, really good child actors and going forward from here. Because again, I'll say, like, he didn't do a great job with Avatar: The Last Airbender, which we'll have to talk about soon, and After Earth, which we'll have to talk about soon. The child actors in both of those movies, which I saw because those are like two of the 4 Shyamalan movies that I saw before we decided to do an entire season on M. Night Shyamalan, suck. I'm very sorry. But I think the kids in this movie did a great job. And my favorite scene in the whole movie was when the boy tackles this guy and gets over his fear and like screams what he was supposed to do in the original situation in which his dad left and for which he blames himself. And so I think at the end of the movie, it does use the elements of horror to have something to say about trauma and being a child and growing up and blaming yourself for the faults of your parents. I do think there is something to say here. I think it is kind of buried under 60 minutes or so of stuff I don't care about. But I think there's like 30 minutes of really, really good movie here.
That doesn't sound like a 3.5 star. I don't know if that sounds like a 3.5 star review.
Those 30 minutes are really good.
When you
though.
say 2/3 of it you don't care about.
So the other 60 minutes I would say are very well constructed.
Okay.
Like really well made. It's just in a genre I don't like personally. And so I'm trying to I don't know how to gauge the balance here. I'm trying to put aside my own personal preferences for film and media, that I personally don't like horror, but I recognize that people I love and respect really do. So I know there's something there that's worthy. I don't know what it is because I don't get it personally. It's like today, Zach, you posted to our group chat a tweet about Taylor Swift and Kendrick Lamar, and I had to spend like an hour Googling stuff about Kendrick Lamar and Drake and J. Cole, who I didn't know existed until I started Googling all this stuff. And I'm still very confused about what's going on with the whole Kendrick Lamar Drake beef and the Grammys, which I don't care about.
Oh my God.
I was going to say, I'm upset that you Googled it because
I
just want to sit and explain this for like 20 minutes. So if you're still confused,
we can't do that.
Great.
No, the first thing I talked about when I was at dinner with a good priest friend of mine today was about the Kendrick Lamar Drake beef thing, because we're both trying to figure it out, because we're both like criminally white men who are trying to figure out what's going on in pop culture. He understands it way better than I do, I gotta say. He's done much better research than I did.
I like how this is still just like, he's done better research. Not just... Like, and he's
Neither of
still
us
describing
actually
it like it's an
listen to hip-hop.
anthropological study, not just like a thing that happened in entertainment last year.
Well, so can I compare hip hop and horror movies for a second?
Actually,
am I allowed
really
to do
funny
that?
You're doing this. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hip hop is a genre of music that's based around certain themes that do not speak to me.
I'm just on a knife's edge waiting for you specifically, of all people, to explain hip hop. Like, I'm
not going to attempt to explain hip
Where is
hop.
this going?
I am only going to explain my personal experience with hip hop.
Okay.
Because I can't explain hip hop. That's my point. That hip hop speaks to an experience of life that I don't have. I was insulated from the kinds of I was very specifically insulated from the kinds of experience that hip hop as a genre of music talks about. So when I listen to hip hop, which I do very, very rarely, I don't understand what they're talking about. I don't get it. And that's just a result of my upbringing. I recognize that other people understand it, other people get it, other people I love and respect get it. Just as horror movies, there are other people I love and respect and I think are really, really intelligent and wonderful people. They love it. I don't. I don't get it.
You didn't grow. So you didn't grow up in a city, so you don't understand hip hop. So you didn't grow up in like the woods being chased by like a masked killer, so you don't understand horror.
So here's my thing about horror. So this is why when the twist comes in this movie. The twist being, oh, those two people you've been staying the whole week with are not your grandparents. They're just murderers who killed your grandparents who are dead in the basement. I was like, oh, phew, we're good. I'm not scared anymore. This is fine. That's like such a pedestrian kind of evil that it doesn't bother me anymore at that point. At that point, I stopped being scared. I was just like, oh, okay. They're just people. There's nothing horrific about this. They're just people doing bad stuff. And I can be fine with that. If they were like somehow supernatural creatures, I probably would have been a lot more scared. And so like if I were to compare hip hop to horror, it's just two things that I can recognize are well constructed. Like I can read a transcript of, Eminem's raps and be like, oh, that's a really well constructed piece of poetry. Talking about stuff that I don't have a personal, like sympathetic connection to, but I recognize it's well made. This movie, it's a well made piece of art that I don't personally connect with. So I gave it 3.5 stars because I think from everything I know about film and how movies are made, it's well made. I can't give it really more than that because I didn't like it more than that. But that's a personal thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. That all totally makes sense. I was just going to say, I did not think this conversation about The Visit was going to become like, here's how hip hop and horror are similar. I just thought that was a funny comparison to make because the timing of it. Literally yesterday, I finished reading a book, The Black Guy Dies First, Black Horror Cinema from Fodder to Oscar by Robin R. Means Coleman, PhD, and Mark H. Harris. Great book. But that is like a definitive look at like the last 100 years of horror movies and how Black characters, creatives, like in front of the camera, behind the camera have shown up and represented like themes. So I think that's part of... It's just that I've seen like a lot of horror movies tackle a lot of different subjects. So you have like, to talk about examples, cited in this book, like Get Out and Candyman and Ganja and Hess, like going into like the Black experience, like describing like racial societal issues. You have like more recently, like Nope, tackling like spectacle and showmanship and like fame and Hollywood and how that, and man versus nature. And you have like It Follows, like which is kind of about like relationships and sexuality and like teenage connect, just like interesting, weird kind of interesting connections between people of a certain age. The Purge, really getting like the Purge series, really a little heavy handed, but like really solidly getting into like class and like wealth disparity and everything. So I think it's just that much like hip hop, like you can kind of just make rock not devoid of politics like any art, but like rock is not directly tied to politics, when hip hop like very directly tied into political social issues. And so it's kind of similar
I mean, I have some opinions about rock music as political, but
that's what I'm saying, like not
separate.
completely
We don't need
devoid
to get into it right now,
right?
But continue.
like
continue with your point. I think I'm following where you're going.
Pop and rock like don't feel like they kind of have to have an overt like political message, when it feels like hip hop maybe more so, like more more innately has some kind of political message behind it, because
I do think rock is inherently anti-capitalist, but continue.
So that's what I'm saying. Like nothing's like completely free of politics, but like some are more overt than others. I feel like similarly, of course, with a rom-com or a romance, you can untangle like sexual, gender, political dynamics in there, but I feel like a lot of genres like don't feel like they have to have overt political themes. But like,
I don't think that's what romance movies are trying to explore.
Right.
They like just inherently have that, because you can't make a romance movie without talking about gender.
Right. Like they are inextricably tied to that, but that's not like an overt messaging they're going for. But I feel like horror is one of the more politically, socially loaded, like analytical, like a common refrain you'll hear people say is that like horror movies like reflects the politics of the age they're made. I think more than other genres. Like you have like Invasion of the Body Snatchers from McCarthyism. Like this is going back decades. Like people will always tie. You have like Dawn of the Dead tied to consumerism. Like people always will tie in horror movies, and sometimes that feels unintentional. Like that just kind of happened. Sometimes, like when you watch Get Out, like when you watch a Jordan Peele film, he is like, "Hey, I am here to give you an overt political message through my horror film."
Yeah,
and you can like that, you can dislike it or whatever. But I think maybe it's because I was actually we're recording this the same day that our episode at Knock at the Cabin came out. And I was just re-listening to that episode, and we kind of have an issue where we're just like, this movie does certain things a little subtly that we really like, that are really good. And then it has, hey, we are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and the apocalypse is happening, like less subtle, and it's not great. I think that's kind of why I think this movie's just okay. because those things you said are absolutely true. Each of these characters has a specific trauma related to like the way they feel about their family situation being played out in this uncomfortable, what they think to be a family situation. But like they were both preceded by teenage girl looking at the camera and talking for 5 minutes, or her brother asking her for like 5 minutes about why she can't look in the mirror and why she doesn't have good self-esteem because her dad left. And similarly, like brother giving a monologue to the camera about how he thinks he didn't do well in this game and that's why father left. So I think I've seen movies do this just like expertly, like in such a subtle and like, you know, fun and tasty way to unpack. This movie is much more, hey, here's this issue that I have. And then, hey, here is me overcoming the issue.
Yeah. So I think this both comes down to, again, I have to talk about my own personality, and then also one of Shyamalan's weaknesses as a director. I think one of his weaknesses as a director is subtlety. Or maybe not a weakness, but just something he's not particularly interested in.
Yeah, that could, like,
He might just not be trying to be subtle.
The fact that he makes the main character shoot a documentary with talking heads where at the end the mom gets to talk about how she feels about her relationship with the parents. Like, that's not an accident that he has characters giving monologue to the screen telling you how they feel. Yeah,
and I think that's good in a certain sense. I liked that. I like that. It also helps that it's Catherine Hahn giving the monologue at the end of the movie. Yeah. Saying, like, this is how I feel about things, because she's a brilliant actress and she can just deliver those lines and those ideas in a way that maintains, for me at least, the gravity and the import of what's going on. And I think the child actors in this movie are good enough that, like, so when Becca is giving her interview and her little brother is interviewing her, and her little brother in the fiction of the film goes off script and starts asking her why she doesn't look at herself in the mirror, I think that was one of the most impactful moments in the movie for me, because it was well delivered. And it came out of nowhere, but also fed directly to the themes of the movie. And it was enough of a swerve that it was uncomfortable in just the right way for me, but also, like I said, like fed into the themes of the movie and fit perfectly within this universe. That is a kind of question that was alien enough to be native. I don't know how to explain that otherwise. It was alien enough to be native to what's going on here. That there are supposed to be these alien elements. That there are supposed to be these things that come out of left field. And that was the exact right thing to come out of nowhere. And that also made me think about early in the movie, because he mentions, you know, when you brush your teeth, you always look down. And there were like a couple scenes earlier where you see her brushing her teeth while talking to her brother. And then I paid attention to how does she treat mirrors throughout the rest of the movie. And it made me think back, you know, did she ever look in a mirror? And no, she didn't. Like, I thought that was really good. That was really well done. This also comes from me not seeing very many horror movies because I don't like them very much. So I don't have a whole lot of experience with the genre. And so my experience of this movie in the genre, from my limited experience of the genre, was very well made. Again, it's in a genre I don't like very much. Yeah. But maybe that is also feeding into why I have such a high opinion of the movie, because I don't have a lot else to go on. Because most other horror movies that I've seen are poorly constructed. I mean, Oculus is probably the horror movie that sticks in my head the most, because I watched it twice and I saw it with like a big group of people. It was fun to watch, like with a group.
So I know you're not going to take my recommendation, but my recommendation is just watch more good horror movies. I know you're not going to do that, and that's fine.
I'm not going to do that because I don't enjoy the feeling that they attempt to instill in the viewer.
No, and that's totally fair. Like, that is out of all the genres, that is one of the most, if it ain't for you, it ain't for you. Like, if you don't like that, you're not going to like it, and watching more is going to reinforce that you don't like it, so I can't blame you. But yeah, no, I think it really just is, maybe just because I've seen more. I've seen like the best of how they pull this off. And I agree that I think it's not even like, oh, it was done poorly, because I do like the first hour of that movie is just discomfort. And most of the discomfort is, why is this person who's supposed to be my, you know, guardian for this week acting so weird? But then you do get, like, it is genuinely uncomfortable to watch, like, this character who's like a 15-year-old girl look down and have to reflect on why she has, like, body image issues. Like, that's uncomfortable in a different way. And it's done very well. The performance is great. It's just kind of similar to, like, she says, like, ooh, I just need to get, like, the elixir. I need to get the elixir. And the brother's like, what's the elixir? And
I think that was one of the pitfalls here. I think that was a misstep.
She gets the grandma to say, like, hey, I forgive you and I love you, daughter that ran away from home. And then it cuts to a scene of her going, there, that's the elixir. And it's like that kind of thing.
Okay. I will say then, I think at that point, I remember watching the movie and thinking, oh, there's Shyamalan. There he is.
Yeah. So I think it's like, because
there's always a little bit of awkwardness going on.
Because when you describe, like, oh, when you go back, like, and look at the way she brushes her teeth and doesn't look in the mirror and the way this kid freezes up, like, those are all, it is woven through really subtly, and I think would be stronger if you did not have a 7-minute scene of the character looking at camera and saying this is exactly how they feel. Like,
yeah,
even if it was like a 2-minute scene, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like a pretty short movie. So that's like a good amount of
the idea of the elixir, I wish they didn't say the word elixir. Yeah. But then at the end, when Catherine Hahn gives her monologue and says, honey, you didn't have to find forgiveness for me. It was there whenever I wanted it. That hit me really hard.
Yeah, that's good.
That was a great moment. I think that was an incredible moment in the movie, and that kind of wrapped the whole thing up for me. And I think that was a really great just synopsis to the whole thing.
Good thematic, bookmark, not bookmark, like bookend on everything.
Yeah, just catharsis and closure and forgiveness were there whenever I wanted it, and I chose to reject it because of my own pride and my own fears.
And that is her coming right out and saying it, but it not sounding like she's coming right out and saying it to the audience. Like,
because it's Catherine Hahn delivering the lines.
And because she's saying it like to her 15-year-old daughter in a way that comes across as natural enough that it doesn't stick out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, ultimately, hey, spoiler alert for something that if you're listening, you realized like 40 minutes ago. It's just the parts that I think I'm just a little cooler on it because I've seen a lot more horror, and I've seen horror done this good. I've seen horror done worse. And I've seen horror done a lot better. And this is just firmly middle of the pack. I'd watch it again, but also while I was watching this, I was kind of just like, I really should be rewatching Blair Witch Project. Like, I was just thinking of other horror movies I could be watching.
From someone who hates horror movies, I would say, dear listener, if you're going to watch just a few horror movies, I would say make this part of your list. I think it does the parts that are not horror pretty well. I like the parts that were not horror.
I could make a pretty long list of recommended horror, and this would be...
I'm pretty sure you could.
This would be in the top 100, but I don't know if it'd be in the top 50.
So this has been the Zach and Aaron show.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hans is also in the audience. What does he have to say about this movie?
Listening to us debate and ramble.
This is my problem.
Yeah, go for it.
This was I'm going to say something very similar to what got me yelled at last week or last time.
Probably going to yell at you again, just full disclosure.
This is a perfectly serviceable movie. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's not the best movie I've ever seen. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen. It is so solidly middle of the pack for me. It does a lot of things very well. Everything that you've talked about, all of those themes that they build on, even though they come right out to the camera and say it and then resolve at the end, like, it works. It's a great movie. It's so middle of the pack for me that I have nothing to say. I could talk to you guys forever about bad movies. I love talking about bad movies. We've talked about this so many times. I love talking about bad movies more than I enjoyed. Like, I will watch
get ready for the next couple Shyamalan films,
so that I can talk about
if you love talking about bad movies.
I know, but this is what I'm saying. Like, we go into this sort of project where, like, Trap. I love Trap. We talked so much about Trap, and I was really excited to talk about Trap. I was watching this, and the whole time I'm thinking, man, this sure is a movie. And then I got to the end of it, and I was like, man, we got to talk about this, and I got to come up with something to say about it. And I thought, you know what? I don't actually have to come up with anything to say because you two have something to say about it. I don't know. This just wasn't interesting to me.
Hans, are you familiar with Are you familiar with the concept of like learned helplessness or like self?
I'm not a movie reviewer, Zachary. We've talked about this. Like, I'm not good at this. I'm not intelligent enough to come up with the talking points for these kind of things.
Sure you are. I
like talking about garbage. I was really good at talking about garbage. I'm really good at talking about things that I like. This was just there. It existed in front of me for an hour and a half, and I thought,
looked at yourself in the mirror.
At the very end of that movie, the credits rolled, and I thought, huh. Yep.
That was a movie.
That was a movie. And that's all I got. I'm not good at this.
Hans. So the point I was leading to, the point I was going to say was that like words and the words we tell ourselves have meaning. If you don't interrupt. If you spend all of your time,
you interrupt me all the time.
Don't interrupt me right now. If you spend all of your time telling yourself,
What do you mean by
can't
right
do
now? Can I
something
interrupt you later?
in like 5 minutes? Like the words we
He's
tell
gonna talk for
ourselves, the
5
thoughts
minutes.
that we have.
If you're going to talk for 5
means
minutes, I
something
might
to
have
us.
to interrupt you now.
Okay, so Hans, the words that we say have meaning, and what we tell ourselves we can and can't do manifests in what we can and can't do. If you tell yourself you can't do something, that will happen. That will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. You will not be able to do something. So what I was going to tell you was how if you spend all of your time, if the hour and a half you're watching this movie and then the hour and a half we spend recording, you're just saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, then your spoiler alert, you're not going to be able to do it. If you just keep telling yourself, I'm bad at this, I'm bad at this, I'm bad at this, you're going to be bad at it. Like when you're on a bike, the direction you look is the direction you go.
Yeah, so imagine
And
you're 8 years old, you're at a pee-wee football game, and someone on the opposite team breaks through the line. It's your responsibility to tackle him. But you
say, I can't tackle him, I can't tackle him, I can't tackle him. You just need to tell yourself you can tackle him. Because when I was getting ready to tell you this, you interrupted me to start talking about how you can't do this. When I was just about to tell you can't tell yourself you can't do it, you're like, Zach, shut up. I need to tell you about how I'm bad at this and can't do it. Your self-fulfilling prophecy was double self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
You couldn't wait for me to stop talking so you could tell me about how you can't do something.
Yeah, hit him low, wrap the arms.
You're giving yourself permission to not do something. You can just do the thing. You don't have to spend the whole time talking about how you can't do the thing. We've reviewed like 57 movies at this point. You're a movie reviewer.
Dear listener, see, this is the problem. If I don't say anything, I get yelled at, and then I say something and I get yelled at. And if I do say something and it ends up being the same conclusion that Zach came to, even though I came to it in a slightly different way, I get yelled at.
I like how, okay, Hans, this is us supporting you. You're like, hey, I'm getting yelled at. They're so mean to me, guys. I can't stop getting yelled at. And it's me saying, Hans, you can do this. Have faith in yourself. You're better than you say you are. This is us supporting
Hans has
you.
a talent for spinning compliments into insults.
This is your friends supporting you, saying you can do a thing, helping you build your confidence in your chosen hobby, in your chosen little side hustle that's generated like negative $72. We're telling you you can do this. If that's what yelling at you is, then yeah, I'm going to yell at you.
Please join our Patreon.
Subscribe for the $1 for the everything tier or the everything plus tier. Everything plus tier has everything
and plus.
It has everything plus. Or you can subscribe to the everything tier. It's only a difference of like $4,999. So your choice.
It's got everything. But everything plus does have everything and plus.
So yeah, okay, you know what, Hans, you're right. I guess I am a huge dick for telling you I have faith in you. I believe in you. You can do this.
I think if Hans has a superpower, it's making anything sound negative.
Yeah.
Honestly, history would say that you are correct.
Hans, this is us supporting you. Give us your opinion.
Yeah, we spent like half an hour like gassing Hans up, and he's like, "See how they're yelling at me for not already being great at this?"
I can't say anything, or they start giving me words of affirmation and encouragements. Hans, what's your opinion on the movie? How much are you going to echo what Aaron said? Or are you going to echo what I said?
Are you going to have your own third thing?
You can have your own opinion. That's
I don't have an opinion. I didn't care for it because I don't care for.
Okay, so you do have an opinion.
Movies.
You said I don't have an opinion, and then I didn't care for it. Those two sentences don't work next to each other. Your opinion was you didn't care for it. I feel like I'm taking crazy.
It is an opinion.
I didn't care for it, but that's mostly because I don't care for horror movies. I thought that it was very well done. This definitely has M. Night Shyamalan's fingerprints.
Oh, it's got his fingerprints all over it.
There was an opinion.
I do want to talk more about, and really, I think going forward, this is something I want us to pay attention to going forward, because I didn't really notice it until this movie, but how children are in all of his movies. And that's something about Shyamalan that maybe in Shyamalan criticism, this is a giant topic, but I haven't really heard people talk about how like children and growing up have been part of everything I can think of that he's worked on. He always has an important child involved at some point.
But yeah. No, that is, and that's not, you don't make like 15 movies and do that by accident.
No, I think that's very intentional.
No, yeah, that's something I have not surveyed all of the Shyamalan literature out there.
No, I
I'm
haven't.
sure somebody's talked about, like, we can't be breaking new ground here. I'm sure somebody's talked about Shyamalan's use of children in his movies. I'm gonna look to see what's been written so far, and I encourage you as the listener to search that out. But
I think that's something
it is something that I have not been as consciously focused on that I would like to now that you've pointed it out.
Yeah, as I was thinking about the movie throughout the day, it's something that I like kind of noticed about the movie and about all the movies we talked about so far a few hours ago, and then haven't had time to like research about what has been the commentary on Shyamalan and child actors and children as themes, like childishness and youth as a theme in his movies. I haven't had the time to look at that. Hopefully, I mean, by the next episode, I hope we'll have more to say about that. What is the next movie we're talking about?
I think it's After Earth.
After Earth? Oh, that I actually saw that one. I don't know if I saw it in theaters or if I saw it on streaming. Probably saw it in theaters because it was 2014, right?
2013.
Is it? Yeah. Next
2013?
one is after. Yeah.
I probably
it is.
saw it in
It is
theaters.
After Earth, Last Airbender, then The Happening, and then kind of similar. Something I want to keep an eye out for, like you mentioned, keeping an eye out for the way he uses, like, you know, children like growing up in those themes in his movies. I don't even know if it's like fully a hypothesis, but like a kind of vague theory that I'm still kind of forming in my head is that I feel like a lot of people who make movies, a lot of people who go into the movie industry, like want to have like a finished product. Like, I'm a big time movie director. I want to have like a really good movie at the end of this. Like, I do movie making in order to get the finished product of a movie. I feel like Shyamalan fits into a camp where I think he is fascinated by the process more than the results. I was thinking of this while I was watching. You reminded me of it when you mentioned about making the girl like an aspiring filmmaker or something. Yeah. And I know when we're talking about Trap, it doesn't show up in the movie itself quite as much, but I think in the way he was like sharing these fun little factoids on Twitter.
Oh yeah, he was like tweeting constantly about like, oh, this is how we did this, and this is why we made this decision about the movie.
Like, I feel like Shyamalan, he definitely cares about the end result. He wants to make a good movie, but I feel like for him, he's just like the process of making a movie, the process of holding a camera and pointing the camera at things. I feel like he's like a journey more than a destination guy. When I feel like some filmmakers, I get the impression that they're more of like a destination person.
Hey, if you're an aspiring filmmaker out there, I think there are much worse uses of your time than studying Shyamalan's films.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, go watch a bunch of Shyamalan movies and try to dissect why he made the directorial decisions he made. Because I think if you want to make movies, he's a fascinating director to look at and say, like, why did he choose to do it this way? Why did he choose to put the camera here? Because, like, I think in this movie especially, there are some very specific camera choices. So we go back to the interview with Becca, how she's talking about how she never looks at herself in the mirror. The characters actively comment on the camera constantly zooming in during the interview, and how it's like slowly pushing Becca out of frame and focusing on the background. Like, the characters in the movie like mention that, and so it's obviously intentional. And so I think something that if you're thinking about making movies, if you've ever dreamed about making movies, I think go watch at least that scene and ask yourself, why would a director make that choice?
We've talked about that in the past too, because like on the surface, it's very easy to say that Shyamalan's writing, his the dialogue is unnatural and seems weird at times, and there are certainly times where it definitely is. But every time so far, at least in the movies that we watched, every time we've said that, we've taken a step back, picked apart that scene, and thought, actually, you know what? It kind of makes sense for it to be written that way. It kind of makes sense for that character to be talking that way.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out why that happens. I have not quite figured out why when I'm watching the movie it's awkward, and then when I sit and think about it, it actually works.
Yeah.
That's a talent in itself to do that, because it's much easier to make something that works at first blush and then doesn't work upon examination. It is much more difficult to make something that does the opposite.
For sure.
And I don't know how Shyamalan's doing that, and I don't know if I will know by the end of this project, by the end of season 2 of In Over Our Heads, that I will know how Shyamalan accomplishes that, because we have talked about, like you said, his kind of like stilted, awkward dialogue that I think when I sit and think about it, you know what? Actually, it kind of works. And I think Trap did a great job. We keep going to Trap because it's
Because it was great.
Because it's the best movie
It was-
ever made.
It doesn't make any
Such a
sense
good
why people
movie.
hate on it so much. It was fantastic.
I think, Hans, you have kind of started to unlock for me understanding why people didn't like it. I think it's this problem with dialogue. I don't think it's a problem. I think it's super intentional on Shyamalan's part. I think Trap does a better job than The Visit of inviting the viewer to understand dialogue in the way that Shyamalan uses dialogue. Because dialogue has a very specific purpose in Shyamalan films. I think in The Visit it has a hyper-specific purpose. I think in Trap, he incorporates his idea of the purpose of dialogue much better into the narrative of the film. And so for me, watching Trap, I naturally got into the rhythm of what Shyamalan intended to do with his dialogue. That it is very intentionally a little goofy. It is very intentionally a little stupid, but gives you so much information about what's going on in these characters' heads without literally just saying it.
And
I
sometimes
think-
literally just saying it.
Sometimes literally just saying it, but also picking the exact words and the exact character that if this person literally just stated their feelings, it felt right in this kind of movie. I think in The Visit, we're less successful at doing that. Not quite as successful as we were in Trap, but I think, hear
Are
me
they
out.
more successful than old?
Kind of. But that's
So
what-
I think The Visit, Old, Trap represents a progression in the incorporation of the intention of dialogue into the actual film.
Yeah, definitely.
So here, you have characters looking into the camera, looking directly into the lens, and stating how they feel about things, which I think here, for me personally, generally works because it's delivered so well. I've said several times already this episode, Catherine Hahn is just an excellent actress, and
Well,
she can deliver those words in a way that works.
It's not just
in the
it's delivered
context.
well, also here the structure of talking head for an aspiring
Yeah.
documentarian, like that does invite characters looking at the screen and telling you exactly how they feel. That was
Yes.
smart, structure, formatting
Yes.
on his part.
I also think that's kind of an easy way out.
Yes,
And so then we get to Beach That Makes You Old. We get rid of the context, get rid of the artifice of movie within a movie. We're presenting this as people actually having conversations on a beach. And so he puts it in the context of people at the end of their artificially shortened lives reflecting on their life. And so you have like characters sitting on a beach preparing to die, talking about what their life was like and trying to console one another. I think that is, I don't know, I'd have to go back and rewatch Old to remember how I felt about this exactly.
I watched Old twice. You don't have to go back and watch Old.
Yeah. Maybe it was more successful, maybe not quite as successful. I don't know. I could go either way. And how Old pulled it off, I think Trap pulled it off. I think Trap threaded the needle on characters looking directly at another character and stating how they feel about the situation in a way that still works within the fiction of that situation. How can a character just state explicitly how they feel? I think that is something that Shyamalan has been chasing. I want a character to be able to look into the camera and say, I am angry, and it work. I think that's a laudable goal, too. It gets made of in Futurama. You can't just have characters express how they feel. That makes me angry.
But that just works so perfectly. Futurama tried it once and knocked it out of the park. Why should anybody else try?
Because Futurama did that in the context of a show within a show, right? So that was a play.
musical
If you're not familiar with this episode of Futurama, the robot devil this is like one of 3 episodes of Futurama I've ever seen.
It's a good episode. It's up there.
So like the devil gets
is it? The
involved in this
Devil's
play that the
Hands
characters
on
are putting
things.
on, like a musical that the characters are putting on, and he's criticizing how it's being put together, and he's saying you can't just have characters come out and say how they feel. That makes me angry. Which, because there's this meta move of movie within a movie, that is a pretty easy move to make. You can have a character meta-contextually
Also, it's an
say
animated,
that makes me angry.
Also, it's an animated comedy from the guy that made The Simpsons.
Also, it's an animated comedy. So like
The medium is the message. That does matter. What the medium that is being used to deliver the products changes the way you perceive the products.
So, in a found footage horror film posing as a documentary, that's a super easy context in which a character can say, that makes me angry. And it work because it's a documentary, quote unquote. There's that meta move. There's a level of abstraction. And then you get into narrative presented as reality in Beach That Makes You Old. And there's a bit of a disconnect here. He hasn't quite figured it out. Now, he is also adapting somebody else's work. So there's also a level of adaptation there that throws a wrench into this whole examination. Now, how close of an adaptation it is, we kind of already talked about. And go listen to our episode on Trap.
And listen to our episode on Beach That Makes You
Also,
Old.
go watch Trap and listen to our episode on Beach That Makes You Old. Maybe go watch Old.
No.
I thought it was pretty good. It was worth watching at least
Hey,
once.
man, watch it once, maybe.
Watch it once. You don't have to watch it a second time.
Yeah.
Watch it once. Trap, you should watch that 15 times.
Yeah. Get the 4K.
Because I think Trap pulled it off. This is something that I think Shyamalan has been working on achieving, and I think he did it in Trap. Now, apparently didn't do it for everybody, because people thought it was bad. People thought the dialogue was
People are
awkward.
wrong.
And I thought, yes, the dialogue was awkward. That was the point. How did you not?
I'm actually really upset
But I think-
that the movie Babylon came out and Babylon failed, and immediately we got like every single day for the next 3 months. I saw a new like article pop up like in my Google recommended articles.
Yeah.
That was just like, this movie that you didn't see is going to be a classic, and I'm like, I did see it. I know you're talking about Babylon, and yeah, people didn't appreciate it as much as they should have. I feel like I have not seen them. I'm really sad that after Trap came out, I did not get 50 recommendations to read. This thriller from M. Night Shyamalan is gonna be a classic in the future.
It's
that's
so
gonna happen. People are gonna.
Also you should go onto our website and read my essay about Babylon.
Why it's good and why I hate
Babylon, why it's good and why I hate it. I spent a lot of time on that.
But I really think Trap is the. Okay, maybe you weren't quite ready for that, but your kids are gonna love it.
Yes. Yeah. I think Trap is where this very particular thing that Shyamalan has been working on over the last few films, I think he pulled it off in Trap. I don't think he pulled it off here, but I think he was also playing with training wheels here by abstracting the whole film through found footage. I think by making it a found footage film, he abstracted the whole thing and made that move of characters looking into the camera and saying how they feel easier. That's playing on easy mode. He attempted it again in Old without easy mode, without the training wheels. He attempted it again in Trap, and he got it on Trap. I don't think he got it on Old.
Also, I'm not going to say this because I think it should influence your perception of the movie, but this was kind of his redemption. This did end up kind of being Shyamalan's good again. This also, when you read about the background of this movie, I think he literally put another mortgage on his house or something in order to self-finance it. So there are also other reasons maybe he was putting on the training wheels of found footage that relate to finances and
this was solidly a genre that was really big and popular at the time, with a Shyamalan flavor to it.
And I think he said studio contracts are a little dried up right now, so I'm going to bet my own house on this. But I can't make an After Earth gambling my own house.
No,
so
I have to make a Blair Witch. I have to make a Paranormal Activity. I have to make a VHS.
So I'm not saying that's the reason he made the movie that typically people who are trying to hide low budgets make, but that
genre-wise, this was a safe bet in 2015.
And I need to raise the money basically myself to make it. There you go.
Yeah.
Found footage.
Found footage horror. You need two cameras.
Hey, there you go.
They're both Sony DSLRs. They're not.
He gambled his house. It's the genre that built Blumhouse. It is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he got Blumhouse on this. You get the full Blumhouse logo on this one. The later films, it's the abbreviated Blumhouse logo. This is the full 30-second long animated logo for Blumhouse.
Shyamalan said, "I'm busting out all reliable."
Yeah.
So maybe it's an accident. So this is. I just say this to kind of contextualize that. I don't know if he said, I am chasing this specific goal here. I'm going to try with training wheels. I think maybe some things just kind of coalesced all in like a great moment where this thing he was chasing happened to fit like this thing he could manage to finance himself. Like we had a lot of convergence of destinies. Yeah. And it's interesting to say we had a convergence of destinies that led to a 3-star movie, but like a lot of just branches came into play and all joined up at the same time to make what I think is pretty decent.
Yeah, it's pretty decent.
But
that I think also he built on going forward to make better movies.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Honestly, I'd be very curious if someone's asked him this in an interview, like not like necessarily what is his favorite movie, but what is like the most important movie he made. Yeah, I mean probably Sixth Sense. I don't know if it's necessarily this one, but I think this would be up there. Like this came at a very critical juncture. This came about the way none of his other movies did. This was maybe kind of a make it or break it for him. Like I'd be very curious to know what his thoughts are on the way this has affected his larger career.
Yeah. Hey, M. Night. I know you're listening.
Hey, M.
If you want to send us an email, go ahead. Tell us what your experience of making this movie was. What you were trying to do here. We have theories, which we've explained over the last, hour and a half. I really want to be right, though. So
I don't care about learning the truth. I don't care about learning something interesting. I just care about learning that I'm right.
If you could confirm everything that I made up over the last hour and a half, I would really love it.
Hey, M. Night, actually, don't listen to him. Can you tell me that all of my baseless speculation founded on nothing is actually the correct baseless speculation? Because that'd be pretty cool if that was the case.
Yeah, I would tell you, maybe Hans's baseless speculation could be true, but he doesn't have any.
Probably not. So
he has no baseless speculation. Again, at the end of the day, I gave it 3 stars. Didn't give it a heart. I thought it was pretty well made. Ends up being okay at the end of the day, kind of like Hans said. But I just have a whole lot more to say about why I thought it was okay, I guess. I've talked way longer about this movie than about any of the other Shyamalan films so far, I think.
You like hot dogs, right?
Hans, can you give M. Night some baseless speculation? He's really only getting baseless speculation from 2/3.
If you had a wild theory about why and how this movie was made, what would it be?
Wild theory about anything.
Yeah. I'll take anything at this point. Oh, they actually were aliens the whole time.
Oh. I don't.
They were not.
M. Night Shyamalan actually invented the found footage horror genre. 30 years after the first found footage horror movie came out. Give us something.
In the mid 80s.
I don't have anything.
You're not yes-anding very well here.
I'm not
in the space.
creative enough to be.
Sure,
this is why I can't do improv.
You created a Discord bot that manages an entire fictional kingdom.
That's not creativity. That's garbage. I create garbage.
You made a whole fun little poster game for them for the Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
That's also not creativity. That's technical skill. That wasn't even my idea. I'm pretty sure that was one of your idea. I just made it.
Shh. Take credit. Okay, Hans has no room to complain about us ever again. We keep just throwing him softballs and trying to give him credit for stuff.
Here you go, buddy. Here's your turn to participate.
Hey, do you want credit for this creative idea? It's like, no, I don't. Why do you hate me so much?
Because it's the truth.
Why are you so mean to me?
So actually, M. Night
giving me props.
M. Night, outside of the call, Hans was telling me how he thinks that this was now I put myself on the spot. Hans was telling me how this was your pitch this was your rejected pitch for Paranormal Activity 7. And when it didn't get picked up, you went and made it into your own movie. And I thought that was a really interesting theory that he had. You've never made a sequel to another property. You've adapted media, but you've never made a sequel to another property that already existed. Hans was telling me that he thinks this was your pitch for Paranormal Activity or for a Blair Witch 4. that the old lady was supposed to be the Blair Witch, and then it didn't get picked up. So you said, I guess I'll put an old man in there too, so it's not too obvious. That was Hans's theory. So let us know if that's true.
Yeah, I mean, he also had a secondary theory. He kind of abandoned this, but I thought it was interesting when we talked about it earlier, which definitely happened, that the old man and the old lady actually were aliens, and that was supposed to be the twist at the end, that they were aliens the whole time, and that the children are actually part alien because those are their legitimate grandparents. However, the studio, like Blumhouse, came in and said that's probably not going to sell. That's not going to make enough money. It won't save your career. So they talk to you.
It won't save your house.
Yeah.
Blumhouse
tried to save your house.
Actually, Hans was telling me that the
talked you
notorious found footage horror film Cannibal Holocaust didn't go far enough and should have been more grotesque and banned in more countries. He thought they were really wimping out with the Cannibal Holocaust movie there.
Yeah, he also told me this movie probably would have been better if it starred Dakota Fanning.
Actually, wait, hold up, Hans. We're kind of cooking with that one. Hold up, Hans. That's a good theory. Wait, hold on. I want to see The Visit starring Dakota Fanning. Hans, that's a good theory right there.
I want to see 3 different versions of The Visit. The one that we just saw, one that's exactly the same, except it's Dakota Fanning, and then another one that's exactly the same, except it's Anya Taylor-Joy.
That's The Witch.
Everything else is identical.
Yeah, you can just watch The Witch. That's basically the third one. Actually, M. Night, Hans told me that this is not supposed to be a horror movie. His theory is that you were just trying to make like a nice, fun, family-friendly movie with nothing sinister about it. But like this just kind of happened by accident. Actually, wait, hold on. That's not that far off from... When you read about this movie, apparently there were like 3 different cuts of it. One was just like more comedy. Like one was like all tension. One was like all comedy. Like I forget exactly how it worked out. That's not far off because there was basically a cut of this that was much more comedic in nature and like less of a horror movie. Hans did the research. He knew that you had like 3 different cuts of this movie that you were like debating between and trying to strike that.
He
right
always does
balance.
the research. Yeah, that's why we love him so much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's too humble to take credit for these ideas. That's why we have to throw them out there.
Actually, Hans had a theory that when you look at the camera that she's holding up in the movie, that does not have the right f-stop and focal length of the camera that's actually used in the movie. So he like really doesn't like that you didn't fully commit to like have the actual camera that she's holding on screen be the camera used to film the movie. You could have gone straight like Inland Empire, like using like a really crappy digital camera and like lean into it. And Hans like just really respects authenticity in like the medium in the fictional meta narrative.
Yeah, he was bothered by how the characters in the movie do comment on how crappy the camera is. However, pretty much every image is crystal clear.
It's like a pretty
so there's
camera.
A little bit of dissonance there that did bump it down like half a star.
Hans was asking me outside of the call. Hans was asking me, and then how often do they have to charge this camera like during the day? Like, could that really sit out all night and still?
Yeah, he does know that. You know, in 2015, an old Sony DSLR at the time, the camera the battery could only last like 2 hours. How did they intend to leave the camera out all night to catch footage of their not grandma?
Hans actually
Hans also said outside the call he wished there were more naked grandma butts.
Hans told me that he was really upset that you used a Sony Vaio laptop, which isn't your fault because for some reason a lot of movies from this time period used a Sony Vaio laptop, but that's just a really crappy laptop. It has like a dumb proprietary charger, and he thinks that should have been factored into the movie. That it's just not a good product that she's using.
Yeah.
Hans was telling me off the call that he loved the bit when the grandpa's just like, hey, here's my poopy diaper, I'm going to shove it in the kid's face. He thought that was the best part of the movie.
I think also Hans said that his 3 favorite parts were the 3 times that the little boy rapped.
Hans actually, while he was watching it, Hans messaged me every single time. Like, so he messaged me once, and then like 30 minutes later, he messaged me again, and then like at the end of the movie, he messaged me again, like in real time, giving like live updates. Every single time that little 13-year-old white kid rapped, and he just said literally me, like every single time.
He did wonder why there are 2 separate characters that we run into who used to be actors and start quoting Shakespeare to the camera, and that just never is explained or comes up again.
Okay, but no, actually, Hans's favorite part was when like the train conductor starts trying to audition for this 15-year-old girl's like home movie.
Yeah. The one black character in the entire movie.
No, he's great. Hans told me that he thinks he's great, that he's like one of the best characters.
I did.
Hans also was a little confused as to why more of the movie doesn't take place in the city of Philadelphia.
Hans really wanted to see more Philadelphia.
Hans's
Never.
favorite line was, "Why are your pants so low?" Response, "I rap."
Hans, again, he messaged me at that part and he said literally me. And he meant the kid, not the grandpa.
The only thing that I messaged you to while I was watching this was because I had to start the movie later than intended. I sent a message to our group saying, I started the movie. I said, okay, watching now. Aaron, like 8 minutes later, said, "Yay, have fun." And an hour after that, I said, "I am not having fun."
Hans told me privately in a DM that he was having a lot. M Night, we're still talking to you, by the way. The structure of the joke hasn't changed. That's still true.
No,
M
not
Night,
at all.
Hans told me that he actually had.
I'm speaking directly to the camera.
Yeah,
I am happy about
am.
this exchange.
Speaking directly to the camera on a purely audio format.
Hey,
Yeah.
did I stutter?
He said what he said. Actually, M Night, Hans was telling me that he thinks you should have made your cameo whenever the mom was calling from like the hairy chest competition on the cruise ship. She thinks you should have had like a chest toupee on and been in like the hairy chest competition.
Definitely should have been in that.
Honestly, M. Night
Hans
Shyamalan should
really-
have been the mom's boyfriend that she went on the cruise with.
Ooh, M Night,
That
Hans
would
was
have
saying
been-
you should have cameoed as Catherine Hahn's new boy toy. That's a good one.
Any final notes?
Yeah, so Hans actually says it's probably about time we wrap up the episode. Hans was telling me that we should probably.
I agree with
We should have
Hans.
wrapped up like half an hour ago, but
Probably.
yeah.
Hans, you're right. I should listen to you more often.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You should really assert
You've had
yourself
some really
more.
great insights this episode.
You should have more
as you usually
confidence in the
do.
opinions that you posit, and you should share these in the podcast instead of sending them.
Yeah,
to
you
us
talk
as
about all this stuff
DMs.
off pod.
Yeah,
And
you,
we
you
have to,
couldn't
like-
shut up off pod, and then you're sending us
Yeah, and I
DMs
have to
while
like
we're
synopsize all
recording.
this stuff for the audience, and I
Yeah.
don't do as well as you
Yeah.
do. At
You're
doing
so much
this.
more eloquent. Like, why don't you just come out and say it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my friends are so mean to me. They never give me
I
any
can't
credit
believe-
for anything.
They give their opinion, and then I give my opinion, and then they yell at me by sharing or sometimes not sharing my opinion.
They gas me up for half an hour, and I take that as criticism.
They give me really weirdly specific and sometimes contradictory opinions on Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra, and I don't know if I like it or not.
I've never seen it.
No, Hans was telling me how he's watched it like 4 times off pod.
Yeah.
I've
Hans
seen,
did say
I think,
after
the first
we
3 episodes.
Hans did say that
That's it.
after we watch the M. Night Shyamalan... Hey, M. Night, I know you're still listening. Hans said after we watch your live-action adaptation, he's going to sit down and watch the whole series.
Yeah, and then there'll be an episode about it where we talk about it. It'll be exclusive to our
That'll be a
Patreon for the
Patreon bonus.
everything.
That'll be on the
Plus
Everything tier and the Everything Plus tier.
Yeah.
Well, of course it'll be in the Everything Plus tier because it's
everything and plus.
Plus. See, Hans made that.
I love
Hans
that
made
gag.
the Patreon and Hans
Hans
made the
made
Everything
that.
tier and the Everything Plus tier. Now it's funny and creative. That's a fun thing he did.
You made Dadbot.
No, Dadbot is garbage.
You made
Dadbot's the best thing.
You made
Ever.
Steven Seagal's face in the toilet artwork.
You made
Yeah,
our
that's
current
garbage.
temporary. You made our current temporary like podcast logo cover thing.
Yeah, it's garbage. I
No,
don't
it's
know
so
why
funny.
you're not understanding about this.
I don't think you understand that the stuff you make is cool and fun and interesting. I think you think very ill of yourself.
I think we need to be done. We need to clap and end this recording.
Okay.
This
'cause we
episode's
forgot
going
to
to
do
be
the
really
beginning.
funny because typically our episode is like an hour and a half and then like 5 to 10 minutes after the kind of outro music. This episode's going to be like 50 minutes and then like 40 minutes after the outro music. And I want
It
you,
shouldn't
Aaron,
be. It
Aaron, I want
absolutely
you to-
should not
Aaron, I
be.
want you
All
to
of this
commit
should
to
go
that
in the
bit.
garbage and the
Oh, yeah,
trash.
absolutely.
Aaron, I want you to commit, please.
We had
No.
such a good bit going at the end of that for like half an
No!
hour.
Yeah.
It was
Hans
so good.
Hans told me that he thought the bit was very funny and he was glad we did it.
Well, I mean, it was Hans's plan the whole time. and it
Yeah,
really
Hans
did
said,
work out.
please, guys, can you please do this? It'll be so funny. And Hans, I really just hope I lived up to the bit that you, like, pitched. Like, you pitched something
Yeah, I
really
mean-
funny. I hope we executed
Yeah.
on it.
It was. I mean, it was a real good Shyamalan move that you
That's all
gave
we
us
wanted.
some honestly pretty awkward stuff to say, but I
Yeah.
really hope I did pull the Catherine Hahn and nailed it.
Yeah. I hope I did a Josh Hartnett. I hope I did not do some actor from the movie The Beach That Makes You Old. I hope I did a Josh Hartnett.
Anyway,
Thanks Hans for
Aaron
like
Clevis
secretly like
out.
Hans. Thank you for like shadow government puppeting and like pulling the strings of this entire
Yeah.
episode.
yeah, excellent work.
The man behind the man
Just
behind the man
incredible.
behind the throne.